APIs and the new battlefield. So this morning, I don't know if you were part of the panel, if you were present during the panel discussion, there was one thing that came up which is more around how cybersecurity has always been an unfair fight. And I usually compare cybersecurity to boxing. When you're boxing, you're against an opponent where you get the same opportunity to attack and defend. Whereas when you are in the world of cybersecurity, you're constantly defending. There is no attack. We're never attacking the threat actors or adversaries. We're constantly defending against them. The worst thing is that they're collaborating and innovating at a much faster pace than we are because we're constantly on the back foot. The other thing that we mentioned was more around how it's on us as practitioners to get cybersecurity 100% right, and the adversaries just need 1% opportunity for us to fail, and there you go, they deliver a knockout punch, crippling the business. Now, with that in the background, we wanted to actually talk about a lot of these attacks recently have been based on compromise of APIs and exfiltration of data through APIs that shouldn't even have been active or were pre-bought APIs. So maybe what I'm going to do is, Abhijit, if we could start with you giving us a quick sort of an overview of what is an API really, and how do you distinguish an API from an application or a web-based application versus a SaaS-based application, just through an example.
Thanks, Ron. I think it's a very good question. So, application programming interface. So, this is more like a B2B consumption or a service model, where the organization connect with another organization to carry out their business. They do not have to develop an application. So, what they can do, they can roll out a URL, and that URL can be actually integrated into the other organization or the ecosystem partners systems straight away to carry out their business transaction. Now, having said so, as the tagline says, the next battlefield. Why this is next battlefield is because there are three reasons, and that is, first of all, your presentation on zero trust. So zero trust is now buzzing around like everywhere. Ever since the cloud service providers have come up. So, by default, you host an application, and that application is actually published behind a web application firewall. You may be knowing it, or you may not be knowing it, but that's a default way of pressing any application into production in cloud. So, if I'm a hacker and I'm looking at kind of an application hosted by an organization on the cloud, I know that most of the applications are behind the web application firewall. So there's nothing for me to actually attack. And the only other kind of corridors which are available to attack are emails and then databases, but then hardly any databases are now available. The data centers, people have migrated out of data centers in the cloud. So second reason for application resilience is moving from data centers to cloud. And in cloud, people do not host more applications than they're actually required, because they need to pay bills for blocking every application in the cloud. So you have limited application, better security, better cyber security, adaptation in the market has actually resulted in web applications, mobile applications being less exploited for data exploitation or any kind of loss attacks. Now, what is remaining is underground. So when a city actually develops, you start digging underneath, and then you see all your metro trains and your commuting system coming up, everything underground. The parkings are underground, everything underground. So you start digging underneath. Similarly, in cybersecurity, the saturation and security happening above the surface. The hackers have now started going under the surface, where the APIs are. And APIs have never been actually developed with security in mind. So that was kind of a, I would say, green territory for them. They could go in, so the same goes, like if you have to attack a country, you do not have to actually attack their military infrastructure or the critical infrastructure, layer or anything. You just attack simply the API surface and you can bring them onto the place. So, and the Ukraine-Russia war has actually shown that, the pandemic has shown that, because before pandemic, the API attack kind of breach rates were far, far less. Like before 2019, it was like almost 4.5% of all the cyber incidents happening were related to APIs vulnerabilities. During the pandemic in 2019, 2020, 2021, this has gone up to 7.5%, and today it is almost at 23%. So just imagine how the kind of hackers or adversaries are now refocusing themselves towards the API side. So this is, I think, is something I would like to build as a kind of context. What is application programming interface and why it is the next battlefield?
Well, fantastic context. I think I love the fact how you raised the point around most of the application infrastructure is sitting behind wraps, and which is where there isn't really a lot of motivation for threat actors to attack them. Whereas if you look at the API sort of landscape, that is slightly out of control, and which is where there's a lot of motivation for attackers to scan for APIs, discover APIs for an organization and start attacking them. So that's brilliant. So maybe just take us through an example of what sort of governance mechanisms are organizations establishing today when it comes to APIs or controlling APIs?
It's almost close to zero, because there was no enough kind of awareness across the board. If you buzz out the word called API, they will say what? So hardly any board people are aware of it, and most of the board members they think, and the CEO and the size of their thing, the API is not a kind of a word or a kind of abbreviation good enough to be actually discussed across the board. So now that gives us kind of a fair view of a reflection on what is the condition of maturity, understanding what APIs are and what it can actually do. All the businesses are thriving on API integration, but then board is not aware of it. So when this actually happens, then it becomes very difficult for organization to understand what are the different layers of vulnerabilities or different layers of surfaces they are operating in. So it's a clear kind of ignorance or lack of awareness of API as a next generation or next surface that will be actually attacked. That actually leads to poor kind of API hygiene or governance, because they don't know, GRCs don't know that API could be another candidate, or your vendor risk team doesn't know that API related questionnaire, security questionnaire could be candidates into your vendor risk assessment questionnaire. So these things actually reflects around where the maturity is all around and what are the governance maturity around API, understanding API, the risks from a corporate risk perspective.
So how would an organization, a mature cyber capability organization, establish basic mechanisms right at the very beginning of testing and publishing APIs in the life cycle? So just at the very beginning of the life cycle itself, what sort of mechanisms can they enforce?
I think you have given me the hint with the question itself, and that's what they say, like you get 99% marks when you understand the question well. So I have understood your question, and the answer is in itself life cycle. That's the key word. So establish the life cycle. Establishing the life cycle for APIs is very important. When you establish, the first thing that you need to actually look into, as a starting point or the first milestone in the life cycle is about discovery. Once you make a discovery about how many APIs you are actually doing, how many are required, how many are actually dead APIs or zombie APIs, and there needs to be kind of sunsetting or purging of APIs that should actually happen. There should be increased parameterization of APIs are required. So all those things need to be actually embedded in the life cycle. So that is, I think, is a kind of a starting point that should answer what you asked me about.
No, that's perfect. So you said clean, parameterize, and purge. That's the starting point for
Discovery.
Yeah.
That's the first thing.
Okay. Makes sense. How do you actually manage authentication for APIs? Is it done differently from traditional sort of applications or SaaS-based products?
So obviously, zero trust again is the buzzword and a magic spice. I would say take it across to the while you are actually developing APIs. So nothing should be trust-based. There should be zero trust on API level as well. So when you are actually creating the APIs, try to have kind of a session key or a token identifier based on which. So when you actually generate the string or the URL and you create a token for that, that means you're creating the lock and you're giving the key to your partner, your business partner. So now they can actually come back resolving your API with that specific key. So that when that key actually fits into the lock, then the lock opens and the communication completes between the two organizations. So that the basic lock and key. So authentication needs to be there, encryption needs to be there, rate limiting should be there. So these are basic kind of I would say parameters that are essential about creating secure APIs.
That's brilliant. Now, before I get on to further questions, I just wanted to give the audience an opportunity to ask any burning questions that they have on the topic. If there aren't any, then we're happy to just continue. But if you have any questions, please, now is the opportunity. Just put up your hand and ask the question. If not, then we'll just continue.
Just one simple question to the audiences. If you have actually installed recently any mobile app and you have authenticated into that app using your Google or Facebook or Twitter identity, have you done it? How many of you have done it? Raise your hand. 16 hands, 17. That's okay. 17 hands. So I think it's really good. So now you know how this has actually happened. So this is called OpenID Interconnect. Again, there is an API. So Google, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, they have all rolled out these APIs to possibly a mobile framework, open source mobile framework development kind of forum. So Expo Mobile framework. So it's a very popular framework amongst the mobile app developers. It has got all the integrated APIs to OIDC. And when you design an application, you can design a financial application that can actually do money transactions within 30 minutes. So it's so easy. Recently, in the last week of May, I think 22nd of May, when it was discovered, there was this API vulnerability within Expo Mobile framework that could actually allow a perpetrator to actually hijack. So if you are, I have actually authenticated into, let's say, a food purchasing app, and this is developed using Expo Mobile. So my identity could be, my account could be hijacked, and a perpetrator can actually operate as my account into my account and order food, and then calling a refund on that, carrying out financial frauds on my behalf, impersonating my identity. So this is the latest one, and it has actually impacted around 2.5 million customers worldwide who use the applications developed on Expo Mobile. The biggest breach that came up was, I think, Optus in Australia that saw 10 million customer records being actually exfiltrated out of the organization, and that was done using the Zombie API. The API that was different was not required. It wasn't integrated into the pre-product. So the project has closed like several years back, but the API was left over there. So there was no kind of API lifecycle management that was there. And the hackers actually scanned, they found this API live and active, and it was again connected to the production environment. So they replicated the databases and sucking out all the information about the users or the customers of Optus up to 2 years back. And that's how 10 million records compromised. And for your information, population of Australia is just 23 million. So almost half of the population's records have been actually leaked out. So this is kind of a magnitude, how it can actually impact. You may not see API breaches happening too quick, too frequent, because this is under the ground, so you need to do a little bit of exploration. It requires a coordinated and more kind of organized perpetrators to actually start doing their research and then go after the organization. It is less frequent, but then when it actually happens, it is high volume in fact. So you will always see data records at a mass of over millions. So 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, 10 million being compromised. So the last one was around the insurance service provider based out of Texas. So Texas Insurance, Workers Insurance is a government entity. So they experienced the API breach, and they ended up breaching 2.5 million records of their insurance claims. So this is kind of a magnitude to which API attacks can actually give results and can cause damage to your organization. Yeah, please.
Okay, does that give a very good example about how we can download different apps, right? And then it asks us to log in with whatever existing sign-on website. So, in your opinion, as end users, what should we do? And if we do use existing credentials that we have, how can we handle that ourselves?
So, as a user, I would say, whenever you download app, never do side loading. Side loading means if the APK files or the app file is actually loaded or being provided to you somewhere as a download from a website, please never do that. Go to Apple's Play Store, Google's Play Store, and Apple's store to actually download those applications. So that will actually ensure that you're downloading the application from a genuine source. That's the first thing. Always download from a genuine source. And then second, if you are actually authenticating that application, your purpose is that. So what you should be doing in your idle time, if you are not actually surfing on any website or any social networking site, try to actually review all the applications. How many apps are actually using, or how many you have actually used in the last 3 months. In 90 days, if you have not touched any application, I'm guaranteed that in the next 365 days, you are not going to also use that. So uninstall that. So that's something that you can also do. Manage your own application lifecycle in your mobile phone. That will actually help.
Yeah, but we know that we are creatures of convenience. So
that's true.
So okay, I think of course by default is we do not do that. But you know that many of us will do that, which is true, right? So I think what you mentioned about how often we actually use the app and how our
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier on, so we are actually creature of convenience. So many of us are actually doing that, is it right? And I think that's a good advice about keeping only the apps that we actually access actively and also being updated and all these things. Because I think a lot of us do not want to have 30 apps and 30 sign details and login and everything. So what other advice can you give us?
Also, if you are actually authenticating into any mobile app in your mobile phone, try to only stick to one authentication or service identity service provider. If it is Facebook, or Google, Google. Do not try to have two or more than two. The reason being is because what you can do, rather than also reviewing that app, you can visit your Google settings page and you can see where all you have actually authenticated or did an open authentication with the Google identity into which applications, and you can actually terminate them. It provides you like how many years or how many days back you have actually last authenticated, resolving to that particular identity, and you can disable that as well if you do not think that it's good enough. And later on, if your authentication is not resolved into the app, the app is going to ask next time when you are going to log into it, or a perpetrator who tries to hijack your account into that particular app, they will be always asked to provide identity. And by the time you have actually changed. So that will actually also create a layer of defense from So it's a two layer of defense. You can use any of them. Either you review the app or you review your authentication, and you cancel, keep on canceling your authentication to the application which you are using. So that's one way. So I don't know if you guys have observed or not. Right outside the door on the left hand side, Kuala is there with this dog. They've got a lovely API security capabilities. Go and explore with them, and that should actually help see what wonders they can actually do and how they can discover APIs.
Alright, that was a plug for Baylor. I don't know if he's getting paid for it, but let's leave it at that. If you were to just summarize maybe 3 critical things that businesses today need to do in order to make sure that they're winning this war of APIs and also not turning into the Optus or the Texas workers' compensation breach, which was again based on APIs. So what would those 3 things be?
That's a very good question. So 3 things I would say again. Why I always keep on saying 3 things is because it's very easy to recall 3 things. When you have 4th and the 5th, you get little ambiguous and fail to recall them. So 3 things. One is establish a life cycle, and then on that life cycle establish your governance model. Second, implement technology and adapt and mandate best practice. So try looking at API security, OWASP top 10 or NIST framework, and try to implement or mandate that in your organization. Third is about where you do discovery. So it's all related to the life cycle management of it, but then establish monitoring and administration. So you need to ensure that you're monitoring. If some APIs of yours are getting kind of too much of enumeration requests coming up, then that's another. So that should be picked up on your SOC or on your scene. And the second thing, ensure that your API gateway is visited or being supervised or managed frequently by an operator. So that's I think 3 things that I would like to say in order to implement an API breach in your organization.
Fantastic. We've still got about 2 minutes, so I'm not going to let you go. Let's just use the last 2 minutes to maybe share some advice on how attack surface management has become so crucial to an organization today to discover really what are your APIs and how do organizations get on top of attack surface management. If you were to just share maybe again 2 or 3 sort of brief pointers from your experience.
Well, I think for answering this particular question directly, before that I would like to actually go a little bit deeper around understanding what is the context, what was the history around such kind of scanning or kind of technology here in the market or in the landscape. So previously, we had Swagger-based API scanning. That means the tool can actually scan. It's like a spider. So it can scan the URLs and can ascertain that out of these 100 URLs, 60 of them are APIs. But then it doesn't have its own brain to actually scan them properly and can find out what are the vulnerabilities within those APIs. So it actually asks you to actually provide parameters, and that is actually contained in the Swagger file. So this was an old way of doing it, and it actually has a lot of biases and gaps within that. Because if the developer knows, and seldom, because of the high attrition rate in this particular territory, if a developer has actually developed an application 6 months after that, he will leave a job and get a new one and go away. So you do not have a kind of a person who can actually provide the right kind of details into that Swagger file. So that's why these tools are not good enough. Now the new age tools are the ones which actually have got AI embedded into it, artificial intelligence and machine learning. So what it can actually do, it can look out from outside on anything which is attached to your domain. So it actually integrates within your API gateway, and the other side actually integrates within your web application firewall, and then it actually scans your organization for any number of URLs that has actually traversed your organization's perimeter. So it can let you know how many are your kind of internal APIs that you have published, and what are the vulnerabilities within that. And it can also let you know how many APIs you are consuming from your ecosystem or your partners, and what are the vulnerabilities around them. And after that, it's an easy work. You sit with the API admin, or you sit with the partner organizations team and resolve all those things. So that's